sense, this is nonfiction. So excuse if the content is offensive, it's official. Now that we have been acquainted, this is my pleasure, my pain, your entertainment.
What's good, everybody? It's your boy Nonpfixion coming back at you one more time with a brand new reaction. And yes, for most of us who've seen this already, Hawkeye is out. Episodes 1 and 2 happened earlier this morning. Today is Wednesday, but it happened early this morning. And overall, for me, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I liked the imagery of an Avenger character from like the ground level. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't crazy big. It wasn't like, oh, the world is depending on this. And even though his world is depending on his familial world is depending on what's happening in the episode so far, but it wasn't something where it's like, oh, not a believable situation so far. And what we're getting shown is it makes me a little exciting because I know now after doing some of my own little research, I know that it branches off into multiple different characters that we may get in the MCU. Sorry. I saw it. See you in the camera. But I digress. So with that being said, we're going to go into a Easter egg breakdown and partial spoiler review of episode 1 by Heavy Spoilers. And I believe it's Paul from Heavy Spoilers. So we're going to get it in and see how everything... Well, let's see what they find out. And then we'll talk about it again at the end. So, make sure the sound is up. Uncover it. And let's go.
Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host, Paul, aka the guy who's been watching the newest Marvel show like a hawk. And this video, we're going to be breaking down all the Easter eggs, hidden details, story, and also discussing what we think is going to be happening in the future. Heavily based on the Nonpfixion run of the same name, it follows Kate Bishop, played by Hailee Steinfeld, as she teams up with Clint Barton. When we last saw Clint, he was talking to Wanda at the end of Endgame, and then an image of him in the Ronin costume was shown to Yelena Belova in the post-credit scene of Black Widow. The costume becomes extremely important in these first 2 episodes, but as always, we start with the Marvel Studios logo. There have been some slight updates to it, including Shang-Chi, who now appears in the M right as the text comes into view. As for the episode, we actually start all the way back in 2012, namely New York, right as the Chitauri invasion begins. The orangey-yellow overlay of the air actually pulls directly from the color scheme of the comic covers, and we'll talk about how the title sequence leans into it too. Here we're introduced to Kate Bishop, and early on see not only her trophies for archery, but also her fencing one, which somewhat plays into episode 2. Kate in the comics was highly trained in fencing, and it's nice that it keeps showing up throughout the entire show. Now we also see her rock climbing and doing a handstand, which sort of foreshadows her climbing up the bell tower later on. Kate overhears her mother Eleanor and father James, who are arguing about how they have to sell the penthouse due to their debts. James doesn't want to do this, and Eleanor says that a solution isn't going to just fall out of the sky. This ends up being ironic as the penthouse is attacked, and later on we can see that they've kept it, so I'm guessing that James's life insurance or something stopped them from having to move out.
You know what kind of shocked me when I seen these first scenes in this episode was to see the Chitauri invasion from a child's point of view. That joint looks scary. Like I can understand. I know when we watched it in the movie theater, we were excited because it was finally happening. The steps to getting to Thanos was finally happening for all of us. But then seeing her when there's a hole in the ceiling and you're seeing the big Chitauri monster going across, the centipede monster going across, and then you're seeing where the Chitauri was actually about to go. They were going towards Kate to harm her. Like they were aiming towards her when they got diverted by Clint Barton, Hawkeye. But to see it from a child's point of view, you don't think about those things. And I was like, that joint would have terrified me if I was a child. Would have, like,
the argument is interrupted when Kate's eavesdropping is picked up, and her dad visits her in a scene that's sort of reminiscent to the I Love You 3001 from Avengers Endgame. Similar to Tony, this is the last conversation that James has with his daughter, and they once more bring up things not just magically falling from the sky, which, Yeah, subtext for you guys there. Now, he instills in her the idea that the only control we have in life is how we deal with the things that are thrown at us and the choices that we make. The death of her father very much leaves an empty spot in her life, and I think this is why she gravitates so much towards Clint.
I think
This
so,
idea
too.
of father figures also comes in the form of a new stepdad, and the themes of parents are clearly laced throughout the opening 2 entries. We also see a stuffed dog toy, potentially foreshadowing the dog later on, and weirdly, though it's clearly
I
there
didn't
in
even think
Kate's
about that.
room, when she returns to it, it's gone. But no, it couldn't be him, could it? Eleanor shows that she's a crack shot
Poor
too by
stuff.
catching some food in her mouth, and it is possible that down the line they might reveal that she's the villain behind it all. I know Marvel Studios don't
She's gonna
always
be
lead
one
into
of
the
the
comics,
villains.
as it would make it so easy to predict all the secrets and reveals, but there might be some clues that we can take from the source material. In the comics, Eleanor was the one who apparently died, and not Kate's father. However, she popped up years later, and it was revealed that she was actually behind the activities of Madame Mask. Now, potentially, they've combined the characters, and it is possible that Eleanor and Mask are one and the same, but we'll talk about that later on in the video. Just in the same way that WandaVision showed us the chaos that would come from the blip, Hawkeye gives us a view of what the Battle of New York would be like for a citizen. In the scene, they do an incredible one-shot take through the house in which Kate looks for her parents. There's also great use of purple in the surroundings, which later becomes the signature color of Kate. During this highly traumatic experience, Kate is saved by Hawkeye, and we see the moment that he jumps off the side of a skyscraper from another angle. Not only was this the opening panel in the comics,
Straight like
but it
the
was also
comic
a
book.
big moment in the Avengers film, and to add to this, we know from the trailers that it's going to be happening again, but this time with Clint and Kate. The loss of her dad, coupled with seeing Hawkeye saving her life, clearly has a big impact on Kate, and we then cut to her father's funeral. Potentially, they might reverse the Eleanor situation.
Like, just think about that. Like, just to be a child. You're already a child in your most innocent years, you know what I'm saying? Especially when you're living a privileged life like that, more likely. You know, things you haven't really seen much. And to see that, and not even like it's like humans doing stuff, it's something that you've never even thought about seeing before. And to see that come, busting through your walls and your windows and your roof, your ceiling, and you're like, it would be crazy.
And have James be the one who fakes
Like, to
his
see
death.
that,
But
that's
that's of
crazy.
course just a fan theory, and we know how they tend to turn out. Now, the funeral scene really brings Kate and her mother together, and the former vows to protect them. Worried that something like the attack could happen again, she dedicates her life to training, and we see as she progresses through the years as a skilled archer and swordsman. We watch as she goes from 3rd place to 1st, and she also learns karate. It's easily my favourite title sequence from a Marvel series so far,
like it a lot.
and it brilliantly uses similar iconography to the Matt Fraction run, with lots of purples, lilacs, violets, blues, and blacks to orchestrate this new hero. We also catch Stain Tower in the intro, before we cut to it in live action. I'm not too up to speed on my New York geography, but I couldn't find this place on Google, so potentially it's a nod to Obadiah Stane, though he is disgraced in the Marvel Universe, so I don't know if they'd name a school after him. Now let me know in the comments below, and whilst you're down there, can you please click the thumbs up button, and also subscribe, as we're going to be doing weekly breakdowns on the show, and we've got our episode 2 one dropping later on today. Now here we catch Kate climbing up a building in order to ring a giant bell after losing a dare. After the first shot doesn't work, she adds a clip to the tennis ball, and this somewhat foreshadows the trick arrows that we know she and Clint will be using later on in the series. This also actually pulls directly from the comics, and in them they ended up using several trick arrows in order to fight against the tracksuit mafia, who show up later on. The bell swings loose and ends up destroying the tower, and because of this, Kate is expelled from school. On Manhattan Island, we cut to Central Station, and this is actually where the famous Avengers Assemble moment happened in the 2012 film. At the top of the building, we can also catch the First Responders Monument, which was put there after the Battle of New York to commemorate all those that helped and gave their lives during the attack. Like the graphic novel, the series is going to be set at Christmas, and it's got a lot of similar iconography to what's in the original run. We join the Bartons, who are seeing Rogers the Musical, a Broadway show about Captain America and the Battle of New York, showing how much its legacy still hangs over the city. There's some great taglines for it, such as an all-American musical for an all-American hero, and we can also see one that reads a timeless story of a timeless hero. Steve Rogers is actually nicknamed the Man Out of Time,
and I know that was paying an homage to the Avengers. It was just, I was thinking, we were watching live here on the channel. I was like, would I go to something like this? I was like, me being kind of a fanboy of the heroes and comics, I probably would. Just one time to say I went. That's it.
And the poster for it looks somewhat similar to the Broadway show Hamilton. Captain America, of course, performed the Star-Spangled Man with a Plan throughout the country during the Second World War, and this was very much a comment on how he was used in real life to sell war bonds. Captain America has always been somewhat of a tool of propaganda, and the character has been commercialized over and over to put out certain ideas. Hell, even Falcon and the Winter Soldier was literally about what Captain America meant, and we hear how he's been twisted once more. The bridge just outside of Central Station is the backdrop, and we can also catch a cardboard cutout of Loki flying through the air on the back of a Chitauri drone ship, which you might remember from the Avengers. Clint pulls a bit of a face at that because in the movie he fired an arrow at Loki at that point and he caught it, but then it exploded. The mock-up of the Avengers is hilarious, and you have Hulk basically just being a green guy in a hoodie with face paint on. I think the Thor and Tony ones are the best though, and Cap hilariously sings about how he can do this all day. I love how Iron Man also takes off, and the character did this at several points in the film, inspiring this pose. Make sure your Hulk smash that like button as well. Now there's also potentially the waitress from the deleted scene of the Avengers who appeared at the end. They also have a guy with a Pimtech logo on, and I think that might be Ant-Man, as Hawkeye says he wasn't even there. However, it's Black Widow who brings back bad memories for Clint, and both he and she were of course trying to sacrifice themselves so that the other could live and take the Soul Stone. Clint watched her die, and it's clearly stuck with him. In many ways, Kate represents him righting the wrongs of him losing a female sidekick, though he doesn't seem that pleased about it from the first 2 episodes. Now from here, we learn that Clint also has a hearing aid, and this pulls directly from the comics, as in the Matt Fraction run, he was starting to go deaf. Up until that point, even though Hawkeye was a normal guy, he was still regarded as a superhero, whereas that run completely deconstructed him. He was going through a divorce, losing his hearing, and it massively grounded him and made him a landlord that had to put up with a lot of crap. In episode 2, we learn that he doesn't know exactly when this happened, but lots of exposure to explosions has clearly caught up to him. Clint ends up leaving after a girl who has a widow ponytail wig on waves at him, and this was similar to how she had her hair when she died. In the bathroom, we also see some graffiti left behind that says Thanos was right.
When I seen that, I was just like, ouch. Like, writers, do you have to be jerks about it? Oh my goodness.
But I swear I didn't put there, even though I say it 8 times an hour. Now Clint seems to nod, almost like, yeah, he has a point. And if you've seen Eternals, then you'll know that the guy may have actually been doing the world a big favor. He's asked for a selfie by a fan, and though it's clear he's been turned into a celebrity, he doesn't want to be one. This is a guy who was an assassin and marksman for many years, and he's just not ready for the commercialization of his image. He and the family decide to go to a Chinese restaurant for a succulent Chinese meal, and bloody hell, I thought that lad got snapped. Guy showed up at 30 years old. Yeah, me. Now at Central Station, Kate arrives and she returns home to find her mother in the penthouse with a new fiancé, Jack.
17.
Jack not only is a similar name to James, but he's also got slick back hair and a mustache, whilst her dad had a goatee. Clearly he's been chosen because of his similarities, but it rubs Kate the wrong way, and when they hide the engagement, it just gets more annoying than when I start peddling the same Mephisto joke that I've been running into the ground for over a year now. It's Mephisto. Now it turns out that Jack has moved in, whilst Kate has been at school, and there's swords now throughout the house, which he's obsessed with. This foreshadows him attempting to buy Clint's sword later on in the episode, and in episode 2, he also shows off some of his fencing skills, so I love how the theme is kept up with him. We later learn that his surname is Duquesne, and if you're familiar with the comics, then you'll know Jax Duquesne was known as the Swordsman. In the source material, he actually met Clint as a child, and he's the person that trained him to be an expert in melee weapons. It's going to be interesting to see if this is brought over to the show, and I think this would be a really interesting reveal later down the line. In the restaurant scene, we get somewhat of an appearance by Laura, aka Clint's wife, played by Linda Cardellini. Also, I'm sure you already know, but just in case you don't, Lila is played by Ava Russo, aka Anthony Russo's daughter. So all you need to do, kids, if you want to be in a Marvel movie, is have your dad direct some of the biggest films of all time. Now Clint's normality is once more broken by a waiter who gives him some free food for saving the city. We then cut across to see a party, and due to Kate's dress, she's confused as a waitress, but this later allows her to sneak into a secret auction. The auction is somewhat based on the Matt Fraction run, but instead of Clint's costume and sword, in that it was a videotape that the villains were after. In the comics, Clint apparently assassinated a dictator, and it was caught on camera, and then this VHS was auctioned off on the black market. There were several interested parties, including Kingpin, and Kate actually disguised herself as Madame Mask in order to sneak in. If Eleanor is masked, then she could have been holding the auction, and this would explain why she's not there, as she wouldn't need to buy the things if she's selling them. So lots of similarities, namely how Kate uses a costume to get into the auction, and edit her items which are linked towards Clint's darker side. However, where the big change is that no one knows that Clint was the Ronin, whereas in the comics it was clearly him on the tape. He also appeared in the Ronin costume at one point, kinda tying in with this too, to bring everything across in a really cohesive way. At the party, we also meet Jack's uncle Armand Duquesne, who threatens Eleanor, and he winds up dead. Again, she may not be behind this, as there are of course the theories that it's Kingpin, Jax, or potentially that little punk Armand. I know it was you, kid. I know it was you, you punk. Now, Armand actually pulls from the comics, and in those, he was Jack's father. On his 18th birthday, he gave Jax a sword and told him the story of the Crimson Cavalier, which inspired him to go on to become the swordsman. Armand was killed at one point in order to draw his son out, which may or may not be similar to the plotline that we're getting here. Now, Kate ends up leaving the party, and outside she comes across a one-eyed dog. In the comics, this dog belonged to Ivan of the Tracksuit Mafia, and it was hit by a car. Ivan abandoned it, and the first issue revolved around Clint saving its life. He took it to the vets, and we learned that it was actually called Arrow, but because it was too on the nose, he ended up changing it to Lucky. Lucky also lost its eye like what we see, and we actually got a full issue from its perspective. He ate a pizza out the box, much like this entry, and judging by the posters and cast list, he's going to be named Pizza Dog, which is something that Kate called him in the original run. Back at the party, Kate catches Armand threatening her mother, and Eleanor downplays even knowing what it's about. I got a lot of Sharon Carter vibes from this, and though it's possibly a misdirect, it does give her the motive to kill.
Like watching her character from after, like from right before this scene, some of the things that how she was talking, how she carried herself, and I know that she's the actress, she's supposed to carry herself a certain way to convince us of certain things, and I think she for the most part was doing a decent job, but when she came out of that room meeting with Armand, I was like, yeah, you're not as clean as you're trying to portray yourself to be, or they're trying to write you to be in the beginning, because you're part of this whole thing. Like I feel like it's a whole network, a whole criminal network, and even though we're seeing them in different pieces, they're all connected, and they're all connected under one person. And you can guess what that is. We haven't seen him yet. It's definitely him.
Kay follows him to a secret black market auction like what we see in the comics, and the Ronin and blade are put on sale. The blade would never retract like that and still fit in the handle, but we did see something similar with Razor Fist, who too had a retractable one in Shang-Chi. Jack also gives Armand some cheek, and they bid over the sword, which we learn was recovered from the Avengers compound. This was of course destroyed in Endgame, and Hawkeye carried it with him through the final battle. Weird they didn't put two and two together with it being from the Avengers HQ, and we learn that Clint also fought several mob bosses in the city. This could potentially introduce Kingpin if the rumours are true, and I'd absolutely love it if he showed up in this series and Matt Murdock showed up in Spider-Man No Way Home. Now it also explains why Val wants him dead, and clearly he got up to a lot of things during those 5 years that we don't know about. Now Armand ends up winning the sword, and when the suit is brought out, the auction is attacked by the Tracksuit Mafia. These are some of the main antagonists from the Matt Fraction run, and they owned an apartment block that extorted those that lived there. Led by Ivan, they say bro all the time, which is also something that's carried over to the dialogue here, bro. Now the first episode of Loki also had a Skrull in a tracksuit in the TVA waiting room, so who knows, we might even get that touched upon in this series, though I do kinda doubt it. Whilst everything is going on, Kate ends up grabbing the suit, and we learn that the Mafia are after a watch from Avengers HQ. I'm not sure exactly what this is, but potentially it might have some Iron Man armor in it, like what we saw in Civil War, or it might just be a nice timepiece. Kate puts on the costume and she kicks the crap out of the Mafia before they chase her through the wine cellar, and she's able to make her escape. The Mafia have clearly had run-ins with the Ronin before, as they recognize this costume instantly. Outside, after they discover the watch, Lucky, who I'm just calling that because of the comics, bites one of the mafia, and together he and Kate flee through the streets. Lucky is
Oh
almost hit
yeah,
by a car similar to the comics,
I was
but
talking
Kate
chat during
manages to
this moment.
save him, and together the pair make it out whilst the police arrive. It's also at this point that I believe we see Cozy, who's a psychopath from the Map Fraction run that dated Kate. In the comics, he also worked for Kingpin and was somewhat of a psychotic clown. Might not be him, but that's who I'm guessing he is based off the rumours.
Interesting.
Now back at Clint's hotel room, we watch as the Bartons have just returned from the Rockefeller Center. On the news, we see an anchor that you might recognise, and he's appeared in a number of MCU films, including the end of Far From Home, in which he introduced J. Jonah Jameson. During this report, Clint realised that someone has taken up his mantle, and we get flashes of his scene from Avengers Endgame, in which we saw him take down a mob single-handedly. Kate returns to her apartment and gives the dog some pizza before heading out to Armand's, and she discovers some butterscotch candy as well as Arnie's body. He was stabbed in the back by the looks of it, which is of course a sign of betrayal. And yeah, I'm just saying it's Eleanor because that's the most obvious one to me. Now Kate heads out into the night, and the mafia arrive once more, potentially introducing Ivan as the leader. Like the comics, he's wearing a black tracksuit, so I think this is probably the character, though he has hair. Anyway, they swarm Kate, but Clint arrives donning somewhat of a homemade ninja costume, and he takes them out before they flee. We end the episode with Clint masking her, and if you've seen the second entry, then you'll know that the two are pairing up. I want to talk about that more in my breakdown for the second one instead of just jumping ahead though, so make sure you subscribed as we're going to be dropping that later on. Now as for my thoughts on the episode, honestly I was a bit disappointed in it, and outside of maybe the first episode of WandaVision, I think this is the weakest of the MCU shows so far. It had a brilliant opening sequence and title scene, and then unfortunately it started to meander for quite a while and just didn't really get going up until the end. I don't want to give my full review of episode 2 just yet, but I had a lot of the same issues with that, and I'm really hoping that the series picks up. I was talking to Greg Alba over at Real Rejects, and he said that it just kind of feels like a Netflix show instead of a Disney Plus one, which I definitely agree with. Lots of unnecessary and low-key plot points, and though I think they did a great job of introducing Kate, I think they didn't really give her all that much to do. Now, I don't know what the general feeling for this show is, as I'm recording this before it's been released online, but I think based off this and the second episode, that this may end up being the weakest MCU series thus far, which kinda sucks as the graphic novel is amazing. Haley Steinfeld is really carrying the show, and though Jeremy Renner is doing the best with what he has, I'm not sure if they're quite nailing what makes people like his character in the comics and movies. Either way, let me know your thoughts below and what you think of the show, and as I've said 500 times, I'll be back later on with another breakdown. Now, we're running a competition right now and giving away 3 copies of Zack Snyder's DC Trilogy on the 30th of November, and all you have to do to be on the chance of winning is like the video, make sure you subscribe with notifications on, and drop a comment below with your thoughts on the episode. We pick the comments at random at the end of the month, and the winners of the last one are on screen right now, so if that's you, then message me on Twitter at Heavy Spoilers. If you want something else to watch, then make sure you check out our breakdown of the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer, which will be linked on screen right now. There's lots of really cool things happening in it, and a couple of little mistakes that kind of hint towards some big spoilers for the movie. If not, then thanks for sitting through this video, and hopefully I see you on.
Okay, so that was Heavy Spoilers, and everybody's going to have their opinion of how they feel about it, good or bad. And here's the one thing I was thinking. Because I had already, a few people came, so okay, let me start over. So, I actually watched this live on stream, and I streamed to YouTube and to Twitch, and we did a watch party, and some people who came in, they liked the episodes, 8 out of 10s, 7 out of 10s, and some people didn't really like it, 4 out of 10, whatever. And I think from how I look at these series, I kind of take them as a blank slate. I know there's blueprints, they're using blueprint, from the comic books, source material, there you go. But it's not verbatim. And so, of course, it's not going to be the same way because they have to tell the story their own way. Now, for me personally, I enjoyed this. I like seeing an Avenger-style character, not style character, but Avenger character on a different level. It might not be, the world ending or like the threat is so big that we need multiple characters. This threat is a smaller threat, but it's a threat to Clint's world, and that to me is big in itself. So I love that aspect of it. I love that it's actually grounded. Everybody wants Marvel and DC. I mean, Marvel and MCU, the stories to all be these big stories, and it's like you got to have variety. If you don't have variety, then you can't appeal to wider audiences, and that's what a lot of these shows are trying to do, is appeal to wider audiences. Yes, it's has a feeling of a Netflix style written series, but that's okay, because not every series is supposed to be grandiose, like super grandiose. We don't need that. We need diversity. We need variety. We need that. It's like if you go to the Disney Plus buffet of Marvel and everything's the same, if everything's macaroni and cheese, all the same brand, then you're gonna be hungry. But if this one's macaroni and cheese and this one's, say, Thanksgiving, this one macaroni and cheese, this one is turkey, this one is ham, this one is chicken, baked chicken, this one is stuffing, this one is greens, this one is collard greens, this one is kale greens, like this, and you got the corn, you have green bean, you have all these different styles, different flavors that you can make a complete meal, and that's what the MCU is. The MCU as a whole is a meal. That's why everything is different. You're not gonna like everything at the buffet, but there's enough to feed everyone. And that's why I like this series too, because it's different. But I mean, everybody has their opinion, and I have no knock on his opinion. I appreciate his content. I appreciate his point of view, because without his point of view and my point of view, then there's no reason for discussion. You know what I'm saying? But I generally like heavy spoilers. I like them a lot. I love what they do, their breakdowns. I love their conceptual work, everything they do on their breakdowns, their explaining videos. It's not just MCU. They do a lot of stuff. Like when we look at Eric Voss and the Rockstars, I believe most of they do is MCU. Everything Always is nothing but MCU. There's a couple other people that we do watch. What's the other? Screen Crush. They do a little bit of everything. So, but regardless, they all do a great job. No, Google, I didn't ask for you. They all do a great job in their different lanes that they kind of run into, and I just really enjoy them. You know what I'm saying? So, but as far as the TV shows, this TV show, I like it. I like that it's different. I like that it's explaining. I feel like I can see some, or it's just my face. That's just my face. No, I got it. Sorry. So sorry. I like this TV show because it's not only showing us an adventure character on the ground level, on the ground floor, it is introducing us to so much more. And just like he said in Easter eggs, Madame Mass is a potential character. If you've seen the second episode, Echo is a potential character. And if you read any comic books or even did any little bit, you even got to read the comic books. Just do a little bit of research on the characters that are so far involved in these first two episodes. They're all connected to Daredevil. They're all connected to Kingpin, which is connected to Spider-Man. Like this universe is really starting to be connected. They're truly creating a connected multiverse. And I'm starting to see kind of what their plan was, or the idea behind the plan for the multiverse and for the Disney Plus episodes. So I think what they're doing is pretty freaking awesome. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think it's cool, man. And the fact that we know that Kate Bishop is getting her own series after this, and we know Echo is getting her own series after this. We know they're spinoffs, and we know Kate spins off into doing her own thing, starting her own detective agency, becoming a detective, but also becoming part of the West Coast Avengers. And then also we know Jeremy Renner has actually came out and said he wants to lead the West Coast Avengers. So it's like it could be so much more. Like I love that. I love the idea of this world is constantly expanding. That is so dope. Like, it's so freaking dope. Like, I love that, man. And I'm so glad to be a geek, nerd, whatever you want to call me. And I'm old, like, so I'm old head. But I'm so glad that I have been alive long enough to be able to see all of this, it's just awesome. And it's so freaking cool. So I think that's probably why, for me, I look at it from a different canvas. I look at it differently because I'm really just happy to have it. Just happy to have the option to see it. Because when I was a kid, none of this was ever a potential. You had bits and pieces of Spider-Man movies and TV shows, because Spider-Man was a thing before Tobey Maguire, so it wasn't like there wasn't no TV show. There were TV shows. There was a Japanese TV show. There were cartoons. You had an Iron Man cartoon. I mean, let's see, had Captain America movie. I think there was 2 of them, and then as I got a little older, we got into the original X-Men TV show that they're bringing back, and that's when my love, like, boom, when I see it on the screen like that, something where the characters felt like they fit, when they fit the comics that I was reading, that me and my brother were reading, it just opened my world up, and I loved it, and I was like, I really want to be a part of this world. Like, I want to be a part of this world. And now that we have it in a section of Disney Plus, this is awesome to me, man. This is truly awesome. And so, but I'm just going to talk forever. I appreciate anyone who watches this video. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for all your love and support. Thank you for the new subscriptions. Thank you. And please go give Heavy Spoilers a sub. Show them some love. Put the notifications on, because they have great content. Show them some love. I appreciate you. I love you guys. If you're new to the channel, subscribe to the channel. And if you like this video, then like the video. Let's go. And if you're here at this point of the video, drop that heart in the comments. Let me know you made it this far. And let me know what's your favorite part so far of the first 2 episodes. Or if you've only seen the first one of the first episode. So, with that being said, I hope you have a wonderful day, night, evening, morning, noon, wherever you are in the world today. My name is Nonpfixion, and I will definitely catch you on the next one. Episode number 2 breakdown coming very soon. Peace.